Okay, everybody, 10.7 circles in the coordinate plane. Now, if you notice the top of our notes here, we are officially changing standards to G.GPE.1. So our first standard is G.C.2. That will be the first, I think it's 9 or 10 questions of your test. And then the last 5 questions or so are going to be on this standard, whereas you can graph circles in the coordinate plane. Okay, so the first part of this chapter, which is the bulk of this chapter, is just circles in general, theorems about circles, angles of circles, arcs of circles, stuff like that. And then this last one is kind of its standalone, which is just graphing circles and everything we can do there. Okay, so just be aware when you go to take your test, there's going to be 2 standards in it. Now, starting out definitions and theorems, and really this is our only definition and theorem for this, the standard equation of a circle. So first of all, we have standard form. Just like if you think back to quadratics, remember standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. You always have to put the x squared first, the x in the middle, and then the constant term at the end. Well, when you're doing a circle, it also has a standard form. A circle, though, looks a little bit different, and it's going to look like this. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Now, the reason this one looks funny and it's got an x and a y in it is because if you go over here and look at the picture of a circle, do you notice that a circle is not a function? Okay, it doesn't pass the vertical line test. If you put your pencil on this and draw a vertical line, it's going to hit more than one spot, which means a circle is not a function, which is why in this equation over here on the left, you've got both an x here and a y here. Okay, now more importantly, now that we know that, in this standard form, you can very quickly identify the center and the radius. The center is h, comma, k. Notice in your equation it's a minus h, but the center is really at positive h. And in your equation it's minus k, but the center is really at positive k. We're going to go over that a lot. And then the radius is just r. Okay, keep in mind in your equation it's r squared, but the radius is really just r. And you can go look at your picture over there. Your center is at hk. Your radius goes out r, and then from there you can kind of swing that around and make your circle. Now, standard form is what we typically deal with. That's what we deal with a lot. That's what you really need to know. But there is also a general form. And general form of a circle is x squared plus y squared plus bx plus cy plus d equals 0. Okay, now general form we are going to deal with, and once we get there, these are more of your level 4 questions. So on your test you're going to see that pop up as a level 4, and I'll show you how to deal with it. But if you're trying to actually graph the circle, this one's not so nice if you're graphing it by hand, because you can't look at it and go, oh, center and radius. It doesn't really tell you anything. You have to do something with it first, which is why we try to steer clear of general form, but that's what it is. Okay, first couple examples. Write the equation of each circle, and we're going to write it in standard form. So the first thing we're going to identify is we're going to identify the center, and we're going to identify the radius. On this picture, your center is at 0, 0. Your radius then comes out 1, 2, 3. So if I'm looking at standard form, I have x minus h squared plus, and by the way, that is always a plus. If you change that to something else, you just changed either to an ellipse or a hyperbola or something else. We're not talking about a circle anymore, and you'll cover those more next year. Y minus k squared equals r squared. So this is x, this is y. X always fills in next to the x. Y always fills in next to the y. Okay, so keep your x with your x and your y with your y. And then your radius is going to fill in right there. So what we're looking at here is x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals radius squared. Now, if we clean that up, because you really don't need x minus 0, that's just going to be x squared plus y squared equals 9, and that is the equation of that circle in standard form. Okay, center at 0, 0, radius 2.5. So, once again, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay, so x is going to fill in with x, y is going to fill in with y, r is going to fill in with r. Well, let's think ahead this time. If I fill in an x minus 0, do you really need the minus 0? No, so that's just x squared. Plus, again, y minus 0, do you really need it? No. Y squared equals 2.5 squared. Don't leave it like that, so grab your calculator. 2.5 squared is going to get you 6.25, so x squared plus y squared equals 6.25 is the standard form of a circle with a center at 0, 0 and a radius of 2.5. Letter C. A circle with a center of 0, negative 9 and a radius of 4.2. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. First part, we're filling in a 0. X minus 0, you don't really need it. X squared plus. Now, second part, you're filling in a negative 9. Well, what happens when you do y minus negative 9? And the answer is the negative and the minus kind of cancel each other, and you're going to be looking at y plus 9 squared. Okay, so keep in mind if you're looking at your equation and it says y plus 9, that y-intercept is really at negative 9. They're kind of like opposites, just like when we found the vertex in vertex form of a quadratic, if you can remember that long ago. Equals r squared. So then last thing we have to do is 4.2 squared is 17.64. So we have x squared plus, in parentheses, y plus 9 squared equals 17.64. Letter D. Center of negative 2, 5, diameter of 14. So, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Take the negative 2. X minus negative 2. What happens when you minus a negative? X plus 2 squared. Then we're going to take the 5. It's just a regular 5, so y minus 5 equals radius. Again, radius. You don't have a radius, you have a diameter. So, remember that a radius is 2 of the diameters or something like that. Radius is 7. We're going to substitute in a 7. 7 squared, 49. And there's the standard form of that circle. Once again, I'm going to point out x plus 2 means that it's really at negative 2. Y minus 5 means that it's really at positive 5. Both signs flip. Number 2, identify the center and the radius of each circle. Okay, so center radius. So my center has something to do with 3 and something to do with 4. But keep in mind, we just talked, remember they both flip? So your center, instead of -3, is really at +3, and instead of +4 is at -4. They both flip. And then remember in your equation, you've got x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So if this is r squared, and I just want r, I hope in your head you're going, oh yeah, that's 4. You have to take a square root in order to get it back out. So your radius would just be 4. Letter B, center, radius. So, center, what's attached to the x? Nothing? That would be 0. +2 means the center is really at 0, -2. And then radius, keep in mind that that's really r squared, so you have to take the square root, and your radius would just be 6. Letter C, center, opposite of -4, 4, opposite of -1, 1. Center is at 4, 1. Radius, square root of 14. Now, depending on what I ask you for, if I ask you for the exact answer, you're just going to leave it as the square root of 14. If I ask you for an approximation, let's say I say round to the nearest tenth, then you're going to hit Control Enter in your calculator and you're going to say, okay, that's approximately 3.7. Okay, the reason we would use an approximation here is because if I ask you to graph this, and you go over here on a graph, you're going to go, okay, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. There's my center. Well, then if you have to go your radius, well, how much is the square root of 14? I don't know. That's not helpful. So you go 3.7, so you go over 1, 2, 3.7, and then you would go up 1, 2, 3.7, and then you would go 1, 2, 3.7, and 1, 2, 3.7, and then you would draw the best circle that you possibly could, which I'm not very good at this, and that's how you'll graph your circle. Moving on to letter D, center, radius. -7, comma 0, because this time the y doesn't have anything. Radius, square root of 5. Decimal approximation. Let me grab my calculator. Square root of 5, Control Enter, 2.2. Number 3. The point -5, 6 is on a circle with a center -1, 3. Write the standard equation of the circle. And then they were nice enough to give us a picture. So, you take a second and look at that. Figure anything out while I write the standard equation of a circle. Okay, so first things first. They gave us the center. They told us it was at -1, 3. So we can fill that in. X minus -1, x plus 1 squared, plus y minus 3 equals r squared. Well, they told us that the point -5, 6 is on the circle. Well, that's fantastic. But if I'm looking at that line, that really doesn't help me with the radius. So what I really want to look at here, and it was so nice of them to provide a picture, would be over here. Because isn't that also my radius? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The radius is 5. So I'm going to put 5 squared, which is 25, and that would be the standard form of that equation. Now I'm going to make it a little bit harder. Number 4. Same idea, I just didn't give you a picture this time. So the point 3, 6 is on the circle with a center at 1, 4. Write the standard equation of the circle. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a picture just to get an idea of what's going on here. If you have graph paper, fantastic. So I'm going to start with the center. They told me the center was at 1, 4. Over 1, up 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my center. Then they told me 3, 6. So 1, 2, 3, up 6 is on my circle. So if this is my center and then I've got this point on it, I'm trying my best. I don't know. Maybe it would look something like that. Now, the problem with my picture versus them providing me a picture is I don't really know exactly how far that distance is to get me a radius, because I'm just kind of guessing right now. It looks like it's at 3.4, maybe 3.14, somewhere in that range. I don't really know. So the only thing I really have to go off of here, let me fix this, is that from here to there is my radius, and I need to find that. So I'm going to label that with an R, and then I'm going to think about how I can find that. Okay, now the first way you can find that is the distance formula. If you remember the distance formula, great. If you don't, even better, because we're at home, Google it. Okay, but if we were in school and this were a test where you didn't get to use your notes, this is what you would have to do. Make a right triangle. Go over, go down. Then you're going to count the distance on the bottom horizontal part. Well, that goes from here to here, which is 2. Then you're going to find the distance going up from here to here, which is also 2. Then because you made a right triangle, you're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. 2 squared plus 2 squared equals radius squared. 4 plus 4 equals r squared. 8 equals r squared. Take the square root. R equals 2 root 2. And for right now, I want you to leave that exactly like that. And I'm just checking, okay, yeah, 2 root 2. Now that we know the radius and we know the center, we can stick that into our standard form. So standard form, x minus h, so x minus 1 squared, plus y minus k, so y minus 4 squared, equals r, notice I'm using parentheses, squared, and you better use parentheses. Okay, now if you can do this little part in your head, 2 root 2 squared, absolutely. If not, grab your calculator, use parentheses. 2 times the square root of 2, close that parenthesis, squared, and you should be getting just 8. Okay, another way to think about that, right there. Okay, remember in your formula you have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Well, right there is r squared. It's 8, which means you're going to put it right there. So we didn't actually even need that last step. But final answer, x minus 1 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 8. And that's the standard form of that equation. And I guarantee you there's one of those on your test, so make sure you know how to do that.